Okay guys, getting ready to brew the next beer. It's going to be Blue Moon Belgian White clone recipe. We're using a 2-row Pilsner type malt, the white wheat, and we're going to use some rolled oats. We've got sweet orange peels, the hops, and some coriander seed, which I have to grind up yet. So that's the basic ingredient list. Grind that up. One other thing I'm going to add to the mash is some rice hulls. I'm going to add half of this bag, which would be half a pound. Okay, the recipe called for 1.5 teaspoons of ground coriander, but I don't have any of that. I just have the seed. So I'm going to use 2 tablespoons because the holes are in there. And what I did was I just smashed them up a little bit with a hammer inside this bag. Okay, it also calls for 3 ounces of the sweet orange, which I'm going to add 4 ounces because I like the orange taste. So I'm going to modify the recipe a little bit. And both the coriander and the orange add at the same time. So I'm just going to measure that up here. Okay, I just measured out my Tettnager hop. Got 1 ounce. Okay, now I've got a pound of oats also in my mash grains here. So we got our wheat, oats, we got our rice hulls, half a pound of rice hulls, got everything. This is all our mash grains. Okay, so I've got my water set here. I've got 4 gallons of water for my mash, and what I do is I use, because we have well water, I used 1 gallon of well water and 3 gallons of reverse osmosis water, and that gives me, it's coming up as 80 total dissolved solids on my hardness meter. I do that just for consistency. That's what I'm going to do. I can adjust how much well water if I want my water harder with more minerals in it, or less. I just add more RO water. But generally I do about 1/4 well water and 3/4 RO water. Okay guys, getting ready to start my mash boil. Here my strike water temperature is 165 degrees. Turn the burner up to high. Should be not too long to get it up. I'd say about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and we'll have this ready. So what I've got in here is 4 gallons of water. That's for my mash. And I've got my false bottom in there with the silicone hose connected to the valve. So my strike water temperature is going to be 165, and then I'll put my grains in. And this is the first time I'm using the false bottom. It's a Northern Brewer false bottom. So we'll see how that works. It is at strike water temperature now. So I'm going to add my grains. Bring it in a little closer here. So I've got 4 gallons of water, 10 pounds of grain. Just gonna make sure everything's getting nice and wet. There's no dough balls in here. And I'm going to take a temperature reading. I got to turn my heat down. And I'm going to try to maintain this at 154. for my mash for an hour. Mash is pretty high. I'm going to turn my gas off right away. The temperature's a little bit high. I had the gas going, but on real low temperature, so I'm at 160-ish. So I'm probably just going to leave the top off for a little bit and stir it. Try to get it cooled down a little bit. Okay, to get the most out of your grain, the most sugars extracted, you want your pH of your mash to be within a certain range, between 5.2 and 5.6. So one of these three squares here, and it looks like I'm on the low end, more of the acidic range. I'm right around 5. So I'm going to leave it that way. This is the first time I've checked pH on my mash, but I'm going to start doing that then, because I have well water, and when I start out with 1 gallon of well water, which is hard water, and then 3 gallons of reverse osmosis water. So I'm going to fine tune it. Next time I'll add a little more well water, and I'll bring the pH up a little bit. If I can get to 5.4, that'll be right about where I want it. Okay, so it's been 60 minutes, and the mash time is done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stir this a little bit, and I'm going to take a temperature reading and see what it ended up at. Because it was mashing about 160. I figured I'd just leave those blankets off it just to see what the temperature it got down to after 60 minutes, just with the cover on it. And it's still got a little heat in it. 156. So it went down to 156. Okay, so since I'm using this kettle for my boil and my mash both, next step I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer my wort down into this bucket here. Just going to drain it down in there. Then I'm going to get rid of all the grains that are in there left in it. So we're going to see how this false bottom works. It was a worthwhile investment. There it goes. Okay, I'm not using any brewing software, so I'm just kind of winging things here. I've got probably about 3 gallons in this bucket of wort, so I'm going to use 2 gallons of sparge water and hopefully end up with around 5 or more gallons, and then I will add up. I want to start off with about 5.5 gallons in my boil pot. So I've got my wort in this bucket here for now, and my grains are sitting there chilling. This will take about 5 or 10 minutes on this burner to get the sparge water heated up. Alright, while I'm waiting for that sparge water, I got a New England IPA. I put this in the bottle maybe 2 weeks ago. It's a little cloudy yet, but a good beer. This was one I did a partial batch on. I did a 2.5 gallon batch on this one. Okay, I got everything reconfigured again. I got my sparge water. It's just below 170, but you don't want to go over 170. And I got my pot back up on there, on the burner, and drain hose hooked up, so I'm getting ready to sparge. So I'm going to pour some of that water into that pitcher there. Okay, I'm going to Doing things the redneck way here. I'm going to sparge my grains by just using the spoon, kind of dissipate the water a little bit so I'm not digging holes in my grain bed. And I didn't open my valve up. There we go. Okay, sparge is going pretty good. It's come out more clear now. Getting toward the end. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take all this wort. I'm going to clean out the kettle, get all the grains out of her, rinse it out good. And then I'm going to take my wort from here. I'm going to put it back in the kettle. I'm going to boil it with our hops and our coriander and our orange peel, and then we'll have our boil. Alright, here's the grains I cleaned out my pot, and it's quite a bit. This is like a 5-gallon bucket, cat litter pail, and it's quite a bit of grain there. The false bottom worked awesome. I didn't see a lot of liquid, so I'd highly recommend that false bottom. It really does drain out good. It has, let's see how hot that is. Let's see. It has that grooved little fitting there. See the little grooves in it? That sucks the water from underneath. Okay, and here's what it looks like underneath. There's some fine sediment. I'll have to see in my wort when I pour it out to see how much sediment transferred through and how much that filtered out. But as far as draining the pot, it did an awesome job because there was not a lot of liquid in this. Alright, I did a quick rinse on the pot with the garden hose, and what we're going to do now is I'm going to pour this wort back into the kettle. Get ready for a boil. Doesn't look too bad. There's a little sediment towards the back in there. I'll show you. Actually, it didn't let hardly any sediment through at all. That false bottom. Look at this is the very bottom of the bucket. So yeah, if you guys are interested in that, using false bottom, I'd recommend that one. Works great. And we ended up with how much? Just over 5 gallons. So here's 6, 7. So just over. So I might have to add a little bit. I think I'm going to go up to about 5.5 gallons. Actually, I'm going to take a reading on this. See what kind of, take a gravity reading on this. See where I'm at. Okay, right at this point, I'm not sure if I need to add any more water. I'm just a little over 5 gallons. And depending on how much sugar extracted from that grain. So we're going to take a refractometer reading. That'll give us our gravity. Take a little bit. A couple drops on here. And it's at 150. So I think it extracted pretty good. At 150, my final gravity, according to the recipe, my final gravity it wants to have in here, yeah, that rooster. My final gravity, it should be 155. So with boil off, it should go down to 155 easily. But I think I'm going to do is add just a little bit of water to it, and we'll shoot for that 155. Okay, here's the guy that's making all the noise. He's part barred rock, part buff Operton. He's a pretty rooster. He's just learning to crow. He's probably about 5-6 months old. Okay, we're starting to get a boil here. So I'm getting ready to add my hops. I'm going to use this hop spider. There's not a whole lot of hops in this recipe. So here's the hops I'm putting in. Add that now, and that's going to boil. It's a Tettnager hop. I'm going to let that boil for about 30 minutes. I'll tell you what, the spent grains are excellent for chicken. The chickens just love these spent grains. They're all over here. I threw a little bit off the side of the deck for the chickens. They really go for those spent grains. That's probably like candy for them. Okay, there's about 10 minutes left in the boil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the wort chiller into the boil pot, sanitize it. Now I'm going to add for the last 10 minutes, I'm going to add my orange peel and coriander. Coriander is in the bottom here. See that? So I'm going to put it into this hop spider. Tricky. Try not to spill any. Not getting away from me. There you go. Alright guys, so we had 30 minutes on the hops and 10 minutes on the coriander and the orange peel. So we're done boiling. What we're going to do is I'll take this hop spider out and let it drain a little bit. Then we're going to hook up our wort chiller to our water supply. Alright, I got the wort chiller hooked up. Immersion wort chiller. Alright, what I did was I adjusted the valve down a little bit just so the water's just kind of drizzling out of there. And that should chill the beer down good. See where we're at so far here. So it's at about 90 degrees. Alright, so while our beer is chilling, I've got our fermenter all prepared here. What I did was I got some star sand and I sprayed every little bit of the lid, the inside, the outside, the handle, everything. I've drained some star sand off this valve here. I had it filled up to about here and I drained it all through the valve and shut the valve. Even the bottom, just sanitize everything, because this is the point where your beer could get infected if some bacteria gets in there once the wort is cooled down good. So you want to star sand everything really good. Alright, my wort's chilled down pretty good. It's getting to about 77 degrees now. So I'm going to take a gravity reading. It looks like it boiled down to just below 5 gallons. So I got a little wort on my refractometer. Take a reading. And it's about, well, it's a little high. Ended up being 157. Which is close enough to 155 for me. That'll work. Okay, once I get all my beer drained out of the brew kettle into this fermenter, I'm going to pitch my yeast because I've cooled it down with that wort chiller. I'll be all set to go. Okay, so before you pitch your yeast, you'll want to spray a little star sand on it, packet, and same with your scissors. Go ahead and sanitize your scissors. Let them sit for about a minute or so. Okay, I left a tiny bit of wort in the bottom here because that's where all the sediment will be. Close that valve up and I get ready to pitch my yeast. I've sanitized this already. So what I'm going to do, take this hose out, put it in the kettle. What I'm using for yeast is a Safale 05. And I'm just going to pitch the yeast right in there. And then all I need to do is put a lock on there. Fill that with some star sand. Alright, star sand everything. So I've got my trap, my water trap. I'll spray that down good. And I'm going to put a little bit of star sand in the trap. I'm just going to fill it to about where my thumb is there. Okay, so I'll star sand in there. I'm going to put the other piece in. So that's just going to bubble, and it has a cap that goes on here. That's going to bubble as the CO2, as if everything ferments. It's going to bubble. That's it. I'm going to snap the lid on tight. And a lot of people like to shake the fermenter to get a little bit of oxygen into your wort. At this point it needs a lot of oxygen. The yeast needs some oxygen to get going. And I'm going to call that good. So I'm going to let that sit for about a week or two. And then we'll take a gravity reading on it and see how it's doing.